Hi, everyone. Welcome to our workshop today for International Open Access Week, Publish Open Access with No Article Processing Charges. My name is Tessa Withorn, and I'm the Science Librarian in Ekstrom Library, and I'll introduce my colleague, Christina Block.
And my name's Christina Block. I'm the Engineering Librarian over in Ekstrom Library. All right, so I'm going to kick us off with who owns our knowledge. So this year's Open Access Week theme prompts us to stop and think about who owns our information and in terms of our research specifically. As we know, we're at an R1 university, and with that comes the production of a lot of knowledge and information. But there is the question of who actually is able to access that, and things like paywalls and publishing fees, and then also licenses to things like databases and subscriptions also limit the visibility of our work, and then also what we have access to. So because of this, a lot of knowledge creation is influenced by who has funding, and that creates an issue with equity and a concern that we could risk losing valuable perspectives by not having access or giving access to researchers that need this information. All right, so what does open access actually mean? The definition by Spark, which they have a great website that talks a lot about open access with really approachable resources, so I highly recommend that. But it's more than just being able to read something. It's actually about removing barriers so that research can be shared and reused and then also built upon by scholars. So Spark defines OA as free, immediate online availability of research articles with rights to reuse. So basically, researchers already value visibility, collaboration, and impact, and this is part of that movement. OER is part of a larger scholarship movement, which includes all of these topics listed below: open scholarship, open science, open data, open software, and open educational resources, which is something we also talk a lot about within the library. All right, so with this, there's two main pathways to publish open access, gold and green. And this is helpful, this visual here, to understand how these are divided. So both make your work freely available, but they differ in how they're shared and where they're shared. Gold access is going to be free to read and read directly from the publisher's website. And typically these are funded by APCs, article processing charges that are paid either by the author or by the institution. Whereas green open access is going to allow publishers, the authors, to deposit or put a version of their manuscript. Sometimes it's, the version right before the publication, just depending on what that agreement is. And they're able to put it in maybe an institutional or subject repository so that there is access beyond having the paid subscription. Readers have the option there to access it for free, even if the paywalled version exists in a published journal. So this was something that really struck me, and it's just this graph is showing from Hostein's 2024 research that the rising cost of APCs over the past since 2019. So we're looking here at how much money researchers have spent on publishing fees, and the orange and yellow bars represent two different components, but all of it is funding cost for publishing. The gold is for fully open access journals where the articles are being paid by the author to put that in. And then the hybrid is a subscription journal where there's an option to publish open access for a fee by either the author or the university. So you can see that obviously this is a steady trajectory, and this graph does take into account inflation. So you can see that it really is a huge leap just over 5 years. And for example, the gold OA cost went from 670 million to 1.7 billion in that time. And then hybrid jumped from 230 million to 770 million. All in all, researchers spending over 2.5 billion in 2023 on publishing their work. And these numbers help us to realize that open access doesn't necessarily mean free. There's just kind of a shift of where that cost is being placed. It's being placed on institutions or on authors. So there's still a fee there, right? There's still scholarship. It is not free, but in the positive news that's going to lead into Tessa's section, there are options and ways to make your work free through things like we said, repositories, library-supported journals, or looking closely at publisher policies, and that can help to offset some of these charges that really, are a concern for equity within the APC and just publishing world as a whole.
Thanks, Christina. And I just want to show another chart that sees this trend at the University of Louisville. So here we have a database called Dimensions that creates a really great graphic of publications that are open access from researchers at U of L. And kind of similarly, in the past 10 years or so, we've seen this trend of an increase in open access publications overall, but starting around 2021 into 2024, we're seeing an overall decline of open access publications. And you can see in the trend where it breaks down between gold and green open access that gold OA, so again, those article processing charges paid by the author, are increasing, whereas green open access or depositing versions of your work is decreasing, which is contributing to that overall decrease in open access. So in talking about some of the solutions, I'm going to break this down into the various roles that we may serve here on campus. So for researchers, you can choose where you publish. We have a lot of power in determining what journals publish our work. Even if we still hold dear to things like research impact metrics and the prestige of particular journals, many times publishers will allow a version of your work to be green archived in an institutional repository. And here we have ThinkIR or ThinkIR that serves that function. And I'll go into that website and show you more in detail. But again, as a general overview, if you're a journal editor as well, many of the wonderful folks here at U of L serve as journal editors or in various roles on editorial boards, you can strive for what we consider diamond open access. So that's another moniker that we use here to refer to open access that is totally free to read, free to publish, free for everything. So that kind of is that, again, diamond standard, which may seem pretty unachievable, but the good news is that we have support here at the University of Louisville through our institutional repository to host journals on our institutional repository as well. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll provide contact information for you to get in touch with our ThinkIR staff to explore some of those options. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with some of the ways that the library is supporting the open access movement, and that is by making what we sometimes call transformative or read and publish agreements with publishers when it's possible. So essentially, those agreements ensure that researchers at U of L can publish open access with limited or waived article processing charges, and we're making more of these agreements every day. So again, in choosing where to publish, I want to promote this great resource called the Directory of Open Access Journals. I'm actually going to jump out and show you live what that site looks like. I also want to highlight that, there are over 22,000 open access journals and 14,000 of those are without fees. So that is really encouraging. You can actually start searching this repository without putting in a keyword. I do have cancer here that I searched recently, so if that is a subject that you're interested in, we can kind of look at what journals are going to pop up in this database. And of course, it's taking a moment to load, but I do want to point out, I'm actually just going to go back over to my slides. And really the important thing that I wanted to show here with this slide was that you can choose an option here to see journals without fees. So that's going to identify for you open access journals that do not charge article processing charges. So they do exist, they're out there, and we encourage you to find those options. Secondly, we have ThinkIR, our institutional repository. So you may be familiar with this as a place for all of our graduate student theses and dissertations, as well as some undergraduate research and posters and other materials, but this is an option for faculty as well. There is a resource that I will show you as well called the Open Policy Finder that we use here in the library and that you can use as well to determine whether a journal allows you to self-archive your work in an institutional repository and what restrictions might be involved in that. So I'm going to jump over here to the Open Policy Finder. If you heard of it before, it used to be called Sherpa Romeo, which seems a little nonsensical. So Open Policy Finder is a little bit easier to use. But let's say we do something like cancer research, which is the top journal that we publish here from U of L researchers. So again, this is a site that we're searching journal title for. So when we go into this record page, it will show that there are options to publish open access with associated fees. It does have no embargo, so there's no wait period that readers must wait to read the full text of the article, and it has a Creative Commons license, so that is giving authors the rights to, and others the rights to reuse their work. You can also see, though, that here accepted versions are allowed with some prerequisites. So if there's a 12-month embargo, so after 12 months after it's published, you can have it available in an institutional repository, and that really increases the visibility of your work. I always like to point out that when you have something in ThinkIR, it will show up in Google Scholar, which we know a lot of people use to discover research materials. So after 12 months, that would be available. Sometimes there are no embargoes as well, so that's something to look out for. But our ThinkIR staff really help this process very easily. You don't have to wait 12 months to deposit your article. You can go ahead and get that process going. And then in our system, we can set that embargo limit so that it will appear when the embargo passes. But also, there is the submitted version. So that is pre-peer review, and you can put that in an institutional repository or a researcher website with no embargo. So you may be familiar, if you're in the STEM fields, with arXiv. That is a very popular preprint server. If you're in other disciplines, ThinkIR can serve that function as well. So this is a really great resource to check out. And then moving into our read and publish agreements that we are really excited to be offering now. So again, these are contract negotiations with academic libraries and publishers to provide those discounts or waivers for those APCs. It is based on our current subscriptions. So part of that agreement is that the university also subscribes to that journal package or that particular journal. So it's kind of this triple dipping, sometimes we refer to it as, because institutions are paying subscriptions, authors are paying article processing charges, and there are other ways in which we provide funding to the journals, but some of these agreements are really increasing. So again, I'm going to jump out and go to this website that we've created. It's housed within our general open access research guide, but we also have this tab over here on our read and publish agreements. So this is very easily Googleable. You can just search U of L library, read and publish, and you can find this page. We have some frequently asked questions here, and this is kind of the bad news in that we do not have any institutional funds for paying article processing charges. We do recommend that researchers try to include that into grant funding budgets. Sometimes grant funders, though, have restrictions around doing that, so that is something to watch out for, but if it's possible, we recommend it. But in those cases that we can create these read and publish agreements, that is where we can provide access to publishing through these providers. If you have questions, of course, librarians are happy to help, but we do also have our head of collections management, Claudine Sprouse, who would be the person that we would talk to about looking into some of these agreements that can be made if we are subscribers. But here we have this very nice and growing everyday list of current agreements. So I'll just leave this here and kind of highlight some of them. Some of them are in the STEM fields and our society publishers. So the American Chemistry Society, the Institute of Physics, the Microbiology Society, the Royal Society of Chemistry. They are really strong supporters of open access and are rewarding subscribers to these agreements. We also have some larger options too, though. Cambridge University Press has a long list of journals that are eligible in these agreements. You can see the link below will bring you to a list of those eligible journals that you can check out. We also have a pretty large collection of Taylor and Francis Expert Medicine Collection journal titles that would be included in those as well. We do also have some individual journal-specific agreements like language problems and language planning, and that will be beginning in the new year. So as soon as that we make these agreements, we add them to these lists. So be sure to check them frequently to see what new agreements are added. And just a few notes about how it works. So libraries make these agreements with publishers, and then the process is pretty easy on your end. As soon as you submit it for peer review, if you're accepted by the journal does the work of verifying that you're a current researcher at U of L and fall under this agreement. Sometimes they may talk to us for verification, but usually this is a pretty simple process, and then your article will be published open access without those fees. Of course, if you have any difficulty or questions about this process, we can talk with our contacts or vendors through the publishers to help out. And you can see we have this longer list of those Taylor and Francis journals. So to wrap up, I just want to emphasize that librarians, we love open access. We really want to help provide access to your scholarship. We've seen that publishing open access increases the visibility of your work, boosts those citation metrics, helps you with your tenure and your tenure process in providing valuable work to the research community. And if you have questions about finding article processing charge-free journals, your liaison librarian is happy to help you talk about these options. We can take a look at some of our transformative agreements and help recommend some of these journals. We can help you use the directory of open access journals to identify a journal that might fit with a manuscript that you're attempting to publish. And I also want to plug that librarians love to talk with students at any phase of their research journey. We can even start talking about open access with undergraduate students and capstone courses, and especially graduate students who are working towards publication. Maybe they work in a lab where they're part of the publication process as well. It's important that researchers at all stages are aware of these options and can contribute to this movement in ways that make sense. So I'll also leave our emails up here as well if there are any questions. Again, my name is Tessa Withorn, and I'm here with Christina Block. We are our STEM librarians, so we do have that particular area of focus, but all of our liaison librarians in the many different departments here on the Belknap campus are happy to jump in and support you as well.